Hey folks, today we're covering Tinto Talks 57. Yes, this is last week's Dev Diary. So this is the last of the Dev Diaries where Johan's going to talk about the major changes to the game brought on by the feedback we've had and the feedback their playtesters and the studio themselves have had as well. This week they're going to start covering actually more of the flavour coming to the game. It is the Holy Roman Empire starting this week, so that'll be very interesting to see what's coming with that. But as I said, this is the last of the major changes, and we're going to start with a small one, but actually a really cool one. So a new country type, as heavily requested. They have added Navy-based countries, and we will find out more details on how these work and how they can be played in the pirates situation. So I think this is feedback from EU4, where you could play as, I think it was like the Caribbean, however you want to pronounce it, that pirate nation you could play as. It looks like that is coming back, and maybe there's going to be some other places you could play as one of these like Navy-based pirate nations or something along those lines as well. So a very short entry there, but actually a really cool addition to the game. The next is going to be Ages Matter More. One thing they wanted to do is make each age of the game feel unique and different to play, whilst also adding interesting choices. Not like Civ 7, it's not going to be like that, but they are going to make some changes here. First of all, they've changed the start of the Age of Renaissance to occur 5 years later, so that at the beginning of the game you get more chance to feel what you might want to do, what kind of bonuses you want to get from your advances, all those kind of things. I probably agree with this. I think the Age of Renaissance probably came too quick, especially if you're playing as some nations, and it meant that you not like missed out on the advances of the first age, but you didn't really get time to choose some of the more interesting choices. You would probably always just beeline the same ones because Renaissance came, and then you were working through that. Yes, you could go back and get old unlocks, but I think this might be a more interesting way to do it. Push it back a little bit, and then you get to play that first age that little bit more, depending on who you play as, obviously. Secondly, they went through how the buildings unlock in the game and made it so guilds are unlocked in the Age of Traditions and the Age of Renaissance, and workshops during the Age of Reformation, and manufactories would be unlocked during the Age of Absolutism, and mills in the Age of Revolutions. Each new category for a building increases productivity and capacity, and when you get the mills, you can also employ labourers instead of burghers. So that kind of splits out how they work in the Age of Revolutions. You're going to have a lot more population then, I guess. It probably makes a little bit more sense to put those to use. And then you can also kind of scale them up a lot more. You're not going to have as many burghers as labourers at that point, so it is going to allow you to get those scales going. As we've seen in previous Dev Diaries, if you stack the same kind of building in the same place, you also get those kind of economies of scale working in your favour as well. So again, you can kind of stack these, make the best of it that you can. And then as I mentioned before, they unlock hegemons in the Age of Discovery and the absolutism versus liberalism societal value in the Age of Absolutism as well. After testing, they've moved the outward and inward societal value to be unlocked when the Age of Discovery starts, and the mercantilism versus free trade societal value to the Age of Reformation, just really jigging them around a little bit. I think making them make a little bit more sense in those ages. And you can see here the Age of Discovery. This age gives access to these government reforms. You can see the list there. Prices in markets have a range between 40% and 250% of base value of goods. So this is a number, I guess, changes every age you go through. Probably shortens that range a little bit as the world kind of comes together that little bit more, kind of gets rid of some of the spikiness in prices, I would think. And the following institutions become available in this age: New World, Printing Press, and Pike and Shot. They've talked about that in a previous Dev Diary. For all countries when active, so if you have this age, you get exploration monthly progress plus 0.25, expected army size 200%, levy maintenance plus 25%. So that is probably going to go higher and higher as you progress. As we know, as you go through this game, you're going to move away from levies at the start of the game to proper unified, uniformed, think of like Napoleonic era armies, a lot more regimented, hence the name, I guess. And then also colonial maintenance minus 25%. This also unlocks hegemonies and unlocks the outward versus inward, as they just talked about. And you can decide which one of those you want to do. Do you want to expand out from where you are? Or do you want your realm to be insular and kind of stay where it is? It probably depends if you're on the coast, if you want to explore, if you want to do a lot of trading, or if you want to be Switzerland. And then the decision is obviously going to be yours. And then as we've already seen, each age also has some unique bonuses that are active during the age as it's active, changing how the age will play a little bit. We've just seen that with those numbers in that previous one. The Age of Renaissance gives higher cultural tradition and increased diplomatic capacity, as well as emphasizing cultural progress and to encourage of alliance on subjects. The Age of Discovery gives cheaper colonial charters and faster exploration, as one would expect. The Age of Reformation gives lower trade maintenance and faster religious conversions. The Age of Absolutism allows you to integrate subjects faster and revoke privileges from your estate, is also far, far cheaper. And the Age of Revolutions reduces the war score costs, but also reduces the loyalty of subjects. Now, let me know what you think about this. I've seen some chatter about, does this make sense, having these like one era bonuses really? I think it will depend how balanced it is, but I do like how outside of the advances, it will make each age play that little bit different. Not crazy different, but just that little bit differently. And the changes we see here do fit these different ones. As he says, the age of discovery, more colonial things, the age of absolutism, it's all about, concentrating control on yourself, revoking privileges from estates, really bringing that control from your estates back into the crown. And then age of revolutions, the flip of that, where you're starting to get, deposed and all those kind of things happening as well. As I said, I have seen some pushback on this, but I don't think it's anything too crazy. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. It does matter, I guess, like how much of a bonus these are, but I think this will work quite well. We'll see, obviously, once we get our hands on the game. The next is colonizing changes. One thing I'm very interested in. It's probably the bit of the game probably looking forward to the most. First of all, they've removed the concept of failing with explorations. No, that is what I wanted. But they do say here it is a source of endless frustration and rage quits among their internal testers. I'm actually disappointed by this. I actually quite like the idea of that. I guess if you were just very unlucky and you paid for like 3 explorations and they all failed, I guess I could see how that would be frustrating and would lead to you like rage quitting your campaign. But that is also, what happened. Ask the Scots how the Darien scheme went. I guess they've played it enough. They've seen that it was more annoying than actually fun to do. Again, let me know what you think. I actually like the idea that it could fail. I don't know whether they could have had like a safety net, like it could only fail once and then it couldn't fail again. Something along those lines. Maybe you get a buff that's like learning from our mistakes or something, and that would make it that little bit better. But anyway, it looks like that has gone. Maybe there'll be a mod that lets you do that again. I'm sure there will be. But then anything that would have affected the failure chance, that now impacts the staging time. So those numbers, instead of causing the expedition to fail, will just delay how long it takes to actually set off and go on its business and try find some new lands for you. Again, let me know what you think about that change. I'm actually a bit sad they've got rid of the total failure, but again, we'll see how it plays once we get our hands on it. Speaking of the staging system, now when you start a colonial charter, you'll need to select an origin province from where you will send population from. To hook this into the economy part of the game better, it also requires goods to be able to ship with your colonists. The current origin location gets a small boost to increasing prosperity and development while the colonial charter is active. So that's to kind of counteract the fact that the population there will be getting sent off on some boats and, colonizing this new place. You will get a bit of a bonus for that prosperity development. So it's not just a negative, I guess, from that area. I wouldn't have been too mad about it just being a negative because you are kind of trading population in one place to make a new place, but I can see why that might have been annoying again. So they've added that prosperity and development bonus. So again, we'll see how it balances out, but I think that's probably a good change. It is cool choosing where they're going from. So again, if you have a culture, I guess, maybe that you don't like, you can send them off on your ships and see how that works out for you. Colonial charter targets now also prioritize where there is a lower population, where you have foreign buildings and natural harbor suitability. So there's more chance of them finding a certain area of the map than it being totally random, I guess, or less random than it used to be. So as you can see on this screenshot here, select where the population is sent from, and you can choose any of these places. You'll probably choose somewhere with the highest population, I guess. But again, it depends what's happening there. You might have a lot of population, but there's a lot of your industry there. Maybe that's where your, military buildings are. So that's where your army comes from. So maybe you'll pick somewhere with less population, but it's somewhere with less kind of going on. So you won't get affected as much as that population moves on. Or maybe you want to pick up those bonuses in a certain place and you're willing to make that trade. And with that, that's the end of the colonizing changes. Next is market creation. A big problem when you had a country at the edge of a market was the fact that you had low market access and thus a weaker economy, and creating a new market was prohibitively expensive. A simple but rather elegant solution, as Johan says himself, was to scale the cost of creating a new market by the market access the current location has. This also has the added benefit of making it easy and cheap to set up a new market for your colonial subject. Again, this sounds like it is potentially a good change. I can kind of see what he's saying here. If you were stuck at the edge of a market and you couldn't really change it that easily, you can now set up your own market. It'll be interesting to see, does this cause a lot of spam of like different new markets popping up everywhere and really kind of fragments that system? But we'll see. I imagine they do merge together again if they're too weak, all those kind of things. But as he says here as well, it does help your colonizing. So I'm on board with that. As you know, big colonizer me. I am English after all. Liberate slaves peace treaty. Another thing requested was to force a country to release all pops they have enslaved from you. I'm kind of surprised that wasn't in the game. That had passed me by, actually. A very good thing to point out by people there. And then he does go on to say here, obviously, if there's like the Berbers or someone, they've come in, raided your coast for slaves, you then can send in your army, make peace, and make them return all those slaves back to you. Obviously, some historical examples of this happening previously. Next is a whole bunch of culture changes. Some of you requested a more dynamic way to handle cultures, so they've added 2 new cabinet actions, which each currently take about 10 years to complete. Unified culture group is the first one, and for this, if you are an empire and the dominant country of your primary culture, the unified culture group cabinet action can be used on a culture group belonging to your primary culture that has no other countries with that culture group. There's a lot of culture going on in there. And what this new cabinet position action does is upon completion, your primary culture will change to a brand new culture. Pops in your country of the same culture group and language will also change this culture. This can only be done once. Someone can correct me in the comments, but I believe this is saying if you're France, you can basically do this cabinet action and everyone that's French or of the French culture group will change to a new culture, but then everyone will move to that culture and then there'll just be that culture rather than the like fragmented different versions of French in this example. Again, I'm not 100% sure. That's probably bad on me, but again, correct me in the comments if I'm wrong, but reading through this a few times, I believe that's what they're saying. I guess a better example would be like the British Isles. If you're England and you've unified the British Isles, you could then use this action to make everyone British rather than being English, Welsh, Scottish, something like that. It would unify everyone under British or something like that. Again, let me know if I'm wrong, but I think that's what he's talking about here. Next one is form a new culture. If you are a kingdom or empire and not the dominant country of your primary culture, you can break away from it and form a new culture. Both of these, if you've played Crusader Kings 3, they have this hybridize or diverge culture system. It sounds like it's something similar to that. I wonder if they've taken some inspiration from that system. You can see here, fostering a new Dalarna culture, and this will make you very different from the Swedes, as Johan points out. And this new culture will be formed in 9 years. I'm not too sure about this. I mean, it makes sense in some ways. At the end of the day, this is a video game. Some people do forget about that, especially on the subreddit, but I won't bash them too much in this video. But I don't know about being able to just press a button and form a culture. But again, as I've just said, you could do that in Crusader Kings. I guess it kind of makes sense, but I wish this was kind of more natural, like it would naturally happen, maybe through events or something like that. Having a cabinet position that allows you to press a button and just change your culture en masse for your realm. I don't know. Again, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm not mad about it, but I'm not sure about just being a cabinet position that you can do and it changes everyone over to it. We'll see once we get our hands on the game. Next is satisfaction and changes coming to this. So keeping your population of states satisfied is a key part of Project Caesar. The balance here has been tweaked countless times over the years of development, and currently each privilege or other source of satisfaction gives small values, so it's harder to get all the estates happy all the time as a player. I'm sure this has had so many balance changes, and I'm sure it'll have even more before the game comes out. And I will agree in this that I don't want it to be easy to make all the states happy. It should be that balancing game. Do you want your burghers happy? Do you want the clergy happy? Do you want the lords happy? Do you want the peasants happy? Do you want 2 out of the 4 to be happy? It should be very, very hard to make all 4 happy, or at least keep them happy without giving up crazy amounts of power, and then your realm potentially falling into some chaos if you do that. One of the changes they've made around this is that when you build buildings in lower control areas, the population that belongs to the estates that those buildings employ get a small boost to their satisfaction, inversely related to the current control. So it's kind of, the higher control, the less of a boost they get. I like this. It kind of makes sense as well. If you build a church and the clergy in that area aren't that happy, they would be happy with you that you built it. But if they're already happy, they're not going to be like mega happy that you built a church, because they're like, okay, we like you already. Like, just, okay, you built me a church, whatever. I do like this change. It does make sense. This will make it possible to target some infrastructure development to keep your population happy in less central parts of your realm. Another bonus of this, you can target this in certain areas if you do want to boost that satisfaction and help with your control in the long term. If you wish, you can also use a cabinet action targeting a specific rebel to stop their progress and even make it go backwards. So as you can see here, progress of Sardinian patriots. These are a rebel faction, and you can see here cracking down on rebels, 0.49, literally just wiping out all the other negative modifiers here. So I'm sure this is going to be pretty expensive. I wouldn't want this to be something you could use all the time. So as soon as you saw a rebel faction, you could just use this, get rid of them. Next one pops up, get rid of those. So I'm sure this is going to be very expensive, or you're giving up something else to get this. It is a cabinet action, so again, it is going to be something you're going to be trading off a bonus just to suppress some rebels. And, you know, if rebels are quite easy to deal with, you might not even bother doing this as well anyway. So anyway, that is the end of the changes. I was going to say this week, but this was actually last week. Johan does say here, this is the last Tinto talk that he's going to write for a while. I wonder what he's going to be getting up to. And instead, he's going to be handing it off to Pavia. If you're not sure who Pavia is, I'm sure you do. He writes the Tinto flavor on Friday Dev Diaries. He also does the Tinto maps as well, kind of showing the flavor and the setup of the world in Project Caesar. So on top of both of those things, he's going to be a busy man. He's also going to be writing the Tinto Talks, I guess, for the next couple of weeks, focusing on flavor mechanics. We knew this was coming. They talked about this a couple of months ago, saying once they'd gone through all the major kind of core mechanics, they were going to go back and talk about specific flavor mechanics for like religions, IOs, a bunch of different areas of the game. And the first one they're going to talk about is the Holy Roman Empire. So I guess Pavia's going to be talking about the HRE tomorrow. And then Friday, we're going to get the next flavor dev diary as well. So Pavia's going to be a busy man and we're going to enjoy everything he's going to talk about, no doubt. But anyway, we'll leave it there for today. Let me know what you thought about the dev diary. Let me know what you think about, I guess, any of the mechanics we've covered over the last, over a year now, I suppose, with all these dev diaries. That is the end of the core mechanic showcase, as I just said. So let me know if you've got any feedback on any of these things. Do go on the forums. As we've seen over the last couple of weeks, they have made a lot of changes. We knew this again already, but they have made a lot of changes based on our feedback, and they keep making those changes as well. So do go on the forums, give constructive feedback. No just griping about stuff, guys. Do give constructive feedback, and you might see those changes. I like everything I've seen over the last couple of weeks with these kind of redone mechanics, and I'm sure I'm going to enjoy everything Pavia's going to talk to us about over the next couple of weeks. But we'll leave it there for today. Do like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm covering this game up to official announcement, launch and beyond, and I cover Crusader Kings 3 in a very similar manner. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.